Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Tim Binnall.
No commercials, no subscriptions, no network, no rules. And at the end of the day, my friends, no comparison. We're back with another edition of BOA The Revival. Welcoming back an old friend of the program, a good buddy of mine, the Wizard of Boz, I like to call him. I'm talking, of course, about Walter Bosley. He is the host of a fantastic YouTube series, I guess you could say. It's like a video podcast. He's prolific. He puts out a lot of shit. He's a hardworking man. He's got a lot going on. He's got a conference coming up in October, NYMZACON 2024. It's actually coming up, I think, by the time this airs, it'll be coming up in a few days. So it may be a little late for folks to get there. Unless they're in the area, they can drive. They can drive and check it out, folks in California. And, of course, he's got a new book that's just come out, the Time Travel Guidebook. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about time travel, and God knows what else we're going to talk about, because I have a feeling it's going to be a jam session here tonight with our buddy Walter Bosley. So welcome back to BOA, my friend.
Hey, great to be back here, Tim. It's always good to talk with you. And yeah, I put out a lot of shit is right, people say. Some would say. But I have fun over there at the channel. So, lets me explore a lot of things that interest me.
Yeah. You were kind enough. You had me on right before we relaunched Binnall of America last year. You had me on 2 weeks in a row, actually, once with Kutch and once just by myself to talk about. And
I got to get you back soon again. Good Lord, it's been too long.
Absolutely, we'll do it. We'll do it for sure. So what? Let's talk first about the conference, because that's coming up in a few days. So is there an online option at all, or just you got to be there in person?
No. This year it's the phrase we're using is, if you want to experience NYMZACON, you must attend NYMZACON. We're trying to. We're taking a lead from you guys, with Paramania and the other things where, sure, there's going to be some highlights that people will get to see after it's over. But we're really trying to encourage that interaction, that pre-COVID interaction that, everybody really does appreciate. So this year, we're not streaming.
Okay. And what is NYMZA? We've talked about this before. I remember we got into the NYMZA stuff way back when you were first on the show originally. But what is NYMZA, and how do you connect this with the NYMZACON? Because that's a very unique name, and for someone who's like, I give Adam saying shit about strange realities. I'm like, no one understands what the fuck that means, Adam. But so you got NYMZACON, you got an even more sort of esoteric name here. So what is the significance of NYMZACON?
Yes, an enigmatic cipher of a name. Basically, NYMZA, NYMZA, all capital letters, we get from Charles Dellschau, the gentleman who told the world about the Sonora Airship Club in his amazing volumes of drawings and journal written and painted between 1896 and 1923. And of course, they were discovered in a trash heap in 1971. And NYMZA is this organization that Dellschau didn't say too much about, but it was based in Germany. He did say that. And it seemed to be this kind of an umbrella organization that sponsored, if you will, little groups of quirky inventors, one of them being the Sonora Airship Club. And according to Dellschau, this NYMZA group had sent him, because he was German, they had sent him to the United States. He enters a port of entry off the Gulf of Mexico into Texas and comes out to California around 1850. That's the decade before our Civil War. And he's supposed to report to NYMZA on the activities of the Sonora Airship Club, who he, Dellschau, claimed had a secret to anti-gravity. And we're building these mysterious flying machines called Aeros, A-E-R-O. And they were located up in Sonora, California, which is right there on the western edge of Yosemite National Park. That's California's gold country. These little towns grew up as gold camps and such. Wonderful little part of California. And so we put together, this idea for an event. Last year was the first one. We're doing the second one this year. And it kind of celebrates Dellschau and the Sonora Airship Club story. And, you can't go into that story without having the mysterious NYMZA in the mix. And I was thinking, well, NYMZA is such a curious word and eye-catching when you see it spelled. Yeah. And it's all over Dellschau's artwork. So I thought, hey, NYMZACON, that's the NYMZA conference, NYMZACON, that works. And so that's what we're doing.
I like it. So when I'm sure it's been a long time since we talked about this Dellschau. So they found his shit in a trash heap?
Well, the house that he had been living in, after leaving California, he was a young man when he was sent to California by the German group, by NYMZA. And after his couple of years there with the Sonora Airship Club, when the leader allegedly dies in a fiery crash of an arrow, there's reason to, suspect that maybe he didn't. Dellschau then returns to Texas and stays, becomes an American citizen. And he's a butcher. He lives as a butcher. He gets married. He has kids. But, when he's old, by 1923, his wife is gone. If I'm not mistaken, I think his kid had passed away too. Oh, but when he passed away, they took all of his stuff, and it was in the house he was living in. They put it in the attic, and then another family lived there. And almost 50 years later, when that house is being cleaned out, the attic, Dellschau's books, his artwork and his drawings, his journal and everything, his diary of this mysterious Sonora Airship Club, they didn't know what else to do with it, so they threw it in the trash. They didn't know its value. They didn't know what the heck it was about. And a gentleman named, last name Washington, Fred Washington, he owned a junk shop and things, a junk and antique shop in town. This was in the Houston, Texas area. Yeah. And so he found this stuff and he took it all to his shop. And there was a gentleman named Pete Navarro who was thumbing through things, and he looked at one of the Dellschau books and several of them, and he bought as many as he could. But it's because Pete Navarro that we even know about Dellschau and the Sonora Airship Club, because he preserved these things and started investigating, and he became kind of the go-to guy for subsequent researchers who had heard about it. Now, here's what's interesting. People heard about it because some of the books ended up in the hands of museums, local museums, and would be exhibited. And ultimately, the Binnall family, they bought several of the books and put them on display in their gallery. Now, who's the Binnalls? The Binnalls are in the JFK assassination milieu. They're connected to the, what was that? The International Commerce Market or something. World Trade Mart or something.
Okay, yeah.
That one of the or a couple of the JFK assassination milieu people were directly associated with. And so it's interesting that the Binnalls found Dellschau's book about these anti-gravity contraptions interesting enough to buy several of the books. So, you have to wonder, who's really interested in all this stuff. But thanks to Pete Navarro and Fred Washington, this stuff was saved. And since then, we have probably the best book for you to see Dellschau's work and really get introduced to the Sonora Airship Club. 2 books. Yeah. Number 1 is Stephen Romano's beautiful gallery book. It's a large, oversized book about that thick, beautiful colored plates, but also a book titled The Secrets of Dellschau by the late Dennis Crenshaw. That's an excellent book. to read, to learn about it. But, that's kind of.
That's a fascinating, it's very, so I presume there's some controversy about how much is real and how much was this guy, did he dream it up as like, was he like some kind of early science fiction savant? I'm sure that's the argument, right? That
well,
he kind of dreamed it
the
up.
big thing is that they like to label him as an outsider artist.
Right.
And of course, we know, the outsider artists do really cool stuff. And, there's Henry Darger, who's a guy that I've been diving into, that, is in the category of the outsider artist. And I think there's something more there, too. But I do not see Charles Dellschau as an outsider artist. There's reason to suspect that he was telling the truth as he witnessed it, as he experienced it. What's interesting is Bill Moore, who I think we're both acquainted with through Greg Bishop.
Yep.
That's how I met Bill Moore. He said that when he went to investigate the Sonora Airship Club, he didn't find any evidence. He didn't find, any names that existed in the present to, the 1850s. And I found that interesting because I've been up there now 3 or 4 times. And from the first time I went, I found family names still existing in the current phone book that were the same names as, people that Dellschau mentioned. And in the cemeteries as well. I found a couple of them. So the actual evidence there at least supports that these people existed. And one of them was connected with running what is now Old Town Columbia. So it appears that the people existed, that several of the people that Dellschau talks about. And Sechery and I, a gentleman who I've been friends with for 20 years, and I publish his books, he and I found some of the very sites that appear in Dellschau's artwork. So the people who say there's nothing to it, they either have not been up there and investigated, or they have some reason for denying what's there, which is a discussion in itself. But it's a fascinating subject, and the event, October 11th through 13th in Sonora, California, is our way of celebrating the whole mystery again. And this year it's bigger. We're having the lectures at the Best Western Conference Center in town, and in the afternoon there's going to be cosplayers dressed up like Sonora Airship Club members, and there's going to be a life-size Arrow, one of these flying machines.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's going to be cool, and there's going to be music and stuff like that. And then on Friday night we have a meet and greet. Saturday is the lectures, and the lectures are, we got Alan Greenfield, we got Joseph Farrell, Daniel List, Sechery, myself, Olaf Phillips, and Dave Allen, the local historian. Yeah. And then on Sunday, Dave Allen leads a fantastic tour where we actually go to these sites where, the leader of the Sonora Airship Club allegedly launched one of these flying machines in front of several witnesses. And, so it's a really fun weekend, and it's just as much a reason to get to know, the people that share the interests as it is the events themselves. So
interesting. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
People can go to walterbosley.com if they want to check it out and find out more details.
Yeah, walterbosley.com. I'm on there now. I'm looking at the thing. So these folks are going to be talking about, this is I love this idea because it's a celebration of something so unique. Now, I don't know, is Sonora, you just kind of got this started. This is like the second year you've done this. So it's like, does the community realize that they're associated with this thing? And are they starting to come around to being like, hey, because, if you get the community of Sonora on board, this could really turn into something quite big.
I'm confident, we're confident that next year it could be even bigger because, yes, when now Dave Allen, our local historian guy, is co-host on a radio show with Olaf Phillips, who I think Olaf. And they both live. Olaf has, in the last couple of years, moved to Sonora, lived there for a couple of years now. And so when they went to the community to tell them this was going on, they got, a really positive response. And so, that's how we're having this this gathering with the music and the cosplayers. That's in town. That's outside of the events at the Best Western. But this, I think with this year, when they see us there, and they know what's going on, I think next year, it might really take off even bigger. I mean, this year we already have 4 times the attendees as we did last year. The physical attendees. Last year we did stream it, and it streamed to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But we want it to be an in-person thing, and we're really pleased that and we still have people buying tickets right now. So
excellent. Yeah. And if people are listening here now, where is Sonoma in relation? Like I'm bad at California geography.
Oh, okay. Sonora.
Kind of like so it's like I was just recently in California in the Bay Area. So where in relation? So if I was in the Bay Area, how do I get to Sonora?
If you go east from San Francisco to Sacramento, that's like a 2-hour drive.
All right.
Okay, and then about an hour or so south of Sacramento, you're there. You're in Sonora. And you're right there on the western boundary of Yosemite National Park. So it's just due south of Sacramento, about an hour and a half drive.
Yeah. So, I find California fascinating just by the geography of it.
Because,
I had only really been out to the LA, San Diego area until earlier this month when I went out to the Bay Area. And it's just like, when you really think about it in the country different and everything, world. It's like the whole Eastern Seaboard's like, I don't know, like 15 states or whatever. And California is just all one fucking state. It's just amazing. It's really crazy how the whole West Coast, almost the whole West Coast of the United States, sorry, Oregon, Washington, but like almost the whole West Coast of the U.S. is just the one fucking state.
And Northern California is a different world from Southern California. That's for
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
You get far enough north of Los Angeles. You get to when you start going north of Santa Barbara, you see that, oh wow, okay, this really is different. And particularly when you go east from there, where Yosemite and Sonora and Sacramento and all that are. It's a beautiful little place. It's a wonderful place to have a conference too.
It sounds pretty fucking cool, and I won't be there this year. But the more you talk about it, and I love what you're doing with the 3 different facets of the event. So you're talking the dinner on the one night, then the event, then the tour. Fucking genius! I love that.
Yeah.
We need more events like that where it's like little interactive. Also, the speakers. Now, do you know what these guys are going to be talking about during the event? They're going to be getting into the Dellschau stuff.
Yeah, we the speakers know to keep it connected. Alan Greenfield, I don't know exactly what he's going to be talking about, but it usually has, because there's a kind of a hint of alchemy in what the Sonora Airship Club guys were doing, because they had this secret fuel and all that. So you got Greenfield in there, talking about, alchemy connected stuff. And then Daniel List, he I don't know exactly what his topic details are, but it'll likely be something to do with NYMZA and the exotic technology thread of all that. And then Joseph Farrell, he's probably going to be another aspect of the exotic technology aspect. And Olav, it just is a mine, a gold mine of the local paranormal weird lore and history. Last year, his presentation really enlightened me. I had no idea that this Sonora, what they call the Gold Country, Sonora, Columbia, Jamestown, Angels Camp, that area west of Yosemite, it's rich with Bigfoot reports and UFOs and weird portal type technology or phenomena and stuff. And he's really, really been researching that. So he usually does, well, he likes to call it's Tuolumne County. he likes to call it the weird Tuolumne angle and that how that supports what we're talking about is that's probably one of the reasons why these curious German immigrants who founded the Sonora Aero Club selected that area, So it gets into that, and then Sechery is going to be talking about the leader of the Aero Club, a guy named Peter Menace, and Dave Allen always talks about the local history specific to either members of the Sonora Aero Club or their associates, and I'm because I'm the guy that's been, Malia and I have been spearheading this. I'm just now figuring out what I'm going to talk about. But it's going to be something,
this sounds cool as hell.
Directly related to. So it's a lot of interesting topics, and people really enjoy it.
I like it. Yeah, it sounds really cool. I'm interested in this Dellschau cat. Yeah, it's interesting that has anyone, like, are there anything in the historical record that can support this story, or was it just kind of, aside from these graves, like, did anyone anyone else other than him talk about any of this stuff?
No, that's what's interesting. So far, Charles Dellschau is our original source, and his stuff was documented in his own works between 1896 and 1923. He dies in 1923, and his stuff is lost to the world until 1970.
Yeah, that's the craziest. 71. Yeah, that's insane. This is like a little bit kind of Voynich manuscript-esque. It's kind of like giving me Voynich vibes.
But I'm convinced that local longtime families up there know exactly about this.
Well, that's what one would think. Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. Like, if there was ever anyone else who was like, yeah, I was part of that group or whatever.
Well, I'll give you a little teaser. This is something that I mentioned in one of my Empire of the Wheel books. But you see, one of the reasons I had heard of the Sonora Aero Club a little bit, but one of the reasons I did a deep dive into it was because in my Empire of the Wheel mystery, we had there's this one figure named Frank Rosasco, who in the first Empire of the Wheel book Rick Spence and I talk about Rosasco being arrested on the train in San Bernardino on November 30th, 1915, and he's losing his mind. He's having a nervous breakdown. But remember, the mystery victim of the 7 people who died was a woman who nobody knew who she was. Nobody knew, how she died. They labeled it as suicide, but I think it's because they knew it was murder, and they were covering something up. But he gets arrested on the train, having a nervous breakdown, hallucinating the face of a woman, claiming I didn't hurt her, but he's holding a woman's purse, and we're told in the paper that the woman that they found, that I'm referring to, they found her dead in a lake in the park. They even said in the newspapers there at the time, when she died several days before this arrest, that there was no purse, there was nothing to identify her. And here's this guy losing his mind on a train holding this purse, right? And so he's arrested, and he's taken to county hospital and admitted immediately to the psych ward of county hospital. And it looks like he's going to be a murder suspect, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's what's interesting. He's only in there maybe a day, and he's released. The newspapers refer to his release like this: Frank Rosasco is released into the custody of friends from Sonora.
Oh, wow.
They're unidentified. Here's a guy who's having a nervous breakdown, losing his mind on this train during the middle of a murder mystery, which isn't over, by the way, because 2 more people end up getting murdered. Here he is losing his mind. He's got a woman's purse. He's hallucinating something about a woman, and he didn't hurt her. They're wondering who drowned this woman in a lake. So, obvious murder suspect, right? And he's just summarily released into the custody of these unidentified people who come from Sonora. So my first thought is, okay, Rosasco, I look into at first I'm thinking, okay, Sonora, Mexico, Sonora, I think in New Mexico or Texas, or, it couldn't be Sonora, California, could it? And so I look at the guy's name and I'm like, okay, is Rosasco Spanish? And I find out, no, it's Italian. So then I look up Rosasco, Sonora, California, and bingo, they are a major ranching family. Great reputation. They still are up there. They have a solid reputation. People really like them. They've been there since around the time the Sonora Airship Club was founded. Now, why is that significant? Because in Dellschau's work, his journals, he says that there were Italian ranchers who provided the Sonora Airship Club with barns to build, maintain, and hide their flying machines. Italian ranchers, and the Rosascos are the biggest Italian ranching family in that area in Tuolumne County, and they've been there since the time of the Sonora Airship Club. And here's the thing. Frank Rosasco, he's released into the custody of some powerful friends in Sonora. He spends, get this, Tim, he spends the remaining 58 years of his life doing nothing every day, doing nothing but mathematical calculations.
What?
Ground survey, like a surveyor does.
Yeah.
On particular spot on the family ranch, and doing astronomical observations.
Weird.
58 years, every day of the remainder of his life. Astronomical observations, mathematical calculations, and surveying something. What the hell happened to this man? And I was an inch away from meeting with one of the Rosascos, Nathan, and he talked to his mother, who at that time was in her 90s, and he said, hey, a guy is researching and asking about Frank. And she goes, your Uncle Frank? She goes, yeah, he went down to San Bernardino and lost his mind down there. So she confirmed that something happened to him in San Bernardino, but that was it. He kind of withdrew, and I left me with the impression that the family just doesn't want to discuss Uncle Frank. He's a huge enigma in all of this, and if they're connected to the Sonora Airship Club, it just it makes it even bigger and weirder.
Yeah, that's really strange. Yeah, very odd. It makes you wonder if there's just sort of like a cabal of high-powered families in Sonora that maybe they were part of the original Sonora Airship Club, but it just kind of changed over time. I don't know. It's interesting. Very odd. All right, so people find out about that at walterbosley.com, and like I said, it sounds pretty awesome. I'm envious here.
We got to get you there next year.
Absolutely. And you got a new book that's just come out, the time travel guidebook. So what's the impetus behind this? You're getting into time travel now.
Well, Tim, you and I are you're just old enough to know what I'm talking about. I'm well old enough to we both, and we've talked about this, we've lamented this. We remember a time in this greater community of alternative research, conspiracy, UFOs, and weird phenomena. We remember a time when there was a lot more fun and good nature between those of us in the community. It was the decades, the days before the extreme political tribalism, before the standard anger that seems to be running through a lot of people.
Before social media, dude. Before everyone was all fucking connected and shit.
Before social media, before all this labeling, if you're into that, you're this or that, or if you espouse this one hypothesis, you have to approve all others, instead of using discernment and just the days where there was a lot more fun. And what I wanted to do was do one of those kind of books that, hopefully it's not as cheesy, and I mean that as good cheese, as the late Timothy Green Beckley used to put out. I mean, we all remember those books. Those were those were wonderful. They were a part of the literature of this culture that we're in this community and the history of it. And, they influenced, what we thought about these weird phenomena and weird things just as much as the serious stuff did. Yeah. And, there was fun with a nugget of truth in there somewhere. So kind of in the spirit of, not quite that far, but in the spirit of a book that, someone could read about this topic and, not feel guilty about having a speculative discussion. That seems to be a thing that's forbidden, with some people. The key to dealing with the snarks and the trolls and the people with the certainty fetish, those addicts of certainty. The best thing to do is blow them off, forget about them, and go about your business and ignore them. Right. And this book is for people who kind of want to enjoy talking about these topics and being able to explore the idea, in a relaxed frame of mind without having to justify.
Right. I get what you're saying. Yes.
So I will say this. I wrote it. Here's the spirit of it. Here's how I tell people to take the book. It's a book that primarily enjoy it, have fun with it. You'll learn some interesting things. But, hey, I'm not saying that if that you shouldn't try. I'm talking about a particular method of time travel, and I encourage the reader to give it a go. But if you don't, you can take it seriously, or you can just have fun with it, and that's the intention.
Well, we don't want to spoil anything, but so you have I'm guessing it's kind of like remote viewing kind of thing. Is this vaguely kind of get into this? Is that like what the time travel is method?
Yeah, well, the method.
I can't imagine you fucking have built the time machine, or you have some instructions for someone who could.
No. It's
build a machine.
It's consciousness-driven time travel.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yes.
And it technically predates, if we can believe that remote viewing began in 1972, it technically predates remote viewing. So I even ask in the book, is it possible that the guys, Ingo Swann and the military guys that started the program, Stargate and all that, did they get the idea from the author Jack Finney, whom I discuss in the book? Because the first time we really see this consciousness-driven time travel, as I talk about it in the book, is from the 1970 novel Time and Again by Jack Finney. But he had explored modes of time travel that didn't necessarily require a time machine. And then, of course, there were stories and fiction before that where, people simply pass through some type of veil or portal, that not a time machine, but not exactly consciousness driven, willpower driven. And I found it interesting that within 5 years of each other, you had Jack Finney's novel Time and Again, consciousness driven time travel, and then you had Richard Matheson's novel, originally titled Bid Time Return, but was changed to Somewhere in Time because the popular movie was based on the Matheson novel. And these were published within 5 years of each other. And the methods that the protagonists use, the method, is virtually identical. It's immerse yourself in the trappings of the target time you're trying to reach, the clothing, the furnishings, the art, the music, and what have you, and close yourself off from your present day world. And, through concentration and other things that are in the book, you basically, essentially, you're throwing a metaphorical grappling hook from your psyche into your target time. And once it takes root, your consciousness will follow. And ideally, your consciousness will go there, and ideally your body will follow. This is the hypothetical scenario from Finney's Time and Again and Richard Matheson's Somewhere in Time.
Yeah.
I had done privately Seshari, my associate, who I mentioned before, he and I had done an in-depth analysis of Richard Matheson's Somewhere in Time, both the book and the movie. And he had discovered some astonishing symbolism having to do with Isis, Osiris, and Set, just thick through the movie Somewhere in Time. The numerology of the film, the symbology of the character, it's just amazing. I even asked R.C. Matheson, Richard Matheson's son, himself an award-winning, respected writer. I asked him, I said, hey, did your dad ever talk with you, or say anything about Egyptian mythology, in relation to his works or Somewhere in Time? And he said no. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Maybe it was a secret between them, but he said no, he wasn't aware of it. And these letters, Seshari, he wrote 3 letters, private letters. They were kept private for 10 years on time travel, our ideas about time travel and the Matheson work. And we finally kind of went public with this. And this had been intriguing me, for years and years. And I'd had some of my own experiences with strange phenomena having to do with time. And, I thought, what? I want to put this down in a book, this method, this consciousness-driven method. And there's a gentleman, I don't know if you know him, named C.W. Chanter, who has his own YouTube channel. And he discusses many interesting things. But pertinent to this, he talks about, he's got a series of videos talking about the 20-year time loop in which you immerse yourself, say, in the music primarily, is how he started it, but it could be movies, it could be anything. But the music of 20 years ago, let's say.
Yeah.
And you can begin to feel things you felt and remembered and experienced. It takes you back, in your mind. And this is, I think, very useful in a consciousness-driven time travel method. As such as I'm talking about. So it's that kind of thing. It's kind of like, I don't know, are you hypnotizing yourself, or are you using the power of your mind to reach back and project yourself back?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of conundrums with time travel with the machine part of it. So the consciousness definitely is more palatable, I guess you could say. It's more reasonable to think that if we ever can do time travel, then it might be some way with remote viewing and consciousness and sort of psychically or however, obviously I can't explain it. I can't even put words to it because we don't know what it is yet. But it's like I always think, and you sent me a chapter of the book, the coronavirus story. I always think of, if they make time travel in some way, maybe they'll someday be able to make it where you don't actually go to a different time, but you can observe the time. Like, I feel like if they could figure that out somehow, I feel like maybe somehow that's something that might be scientifically plausible, like some way of observing into the past. I don't know. I'm no scientist.
I mentioned this in the book, that these spectacles let me back up to say, I talk about Ernetti's chronovisor, and also the fact that Ernetti confessed on his deathbed that he made it all up. It was a lie. That he was inspired by Baird's camera of past events, which preceded his chronovisor, and itself was a lie. But here's what's interesting is I found those 2 stories intriguing when I first heard them, because I had a mentor whom I have mentioned frequently and talked about him in my books. And he was in the U.S. intelligence community for 44 years when he had to retire over a health issue.
Yeah.
And he had told me back in the 90s that, or in the late 80s, he had told me that there was a larger cavern underneath Carlsbad Caverns. And it was a larger cavern room, bigger than the one that the public knew about. And it was still classified. And he told me that they had found relics of a past people, civilized people in this lower chamber. And one of the relics they found, shades of Planet of the Apes, right?
Yeah.
The first film. One of the things he claimed they found was a pair of spectacles, eyeglasses, but
Right.
the lenses were not optical glass. They didn't know what the heck these were for. So they took them in, and it was later in the lab that one of the techs and the scientists discovered accidentally that because of some light shining on them, that there in each of the non-optical glass lenses, there was a fine, ultra-fine wire running horizontally through each of the non-optical glass lenses.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't tell me how, but he said they eventually figured out that there was something recorded. I mean, there is technology to do that. You just read the magnetic, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they discovered that there was something recorded on these wires, and they were able to do a playback, project it. And apparently the glasses were used by somebody either had gone into the past or was able to view into the past and recorded what they were seeing on those wires. This is just a story I was told. I was not shown these things. Wow. I was not told where the evidence was for it. It was just something I was told. Now, here's what's interesting. In the early to mid 90s, I remember there appeared a newspaper article about, we've discovered a new larger chamber under Carlsbad Caverns.
Wow.
And I remember saving that. It's in my archives in a storage, but I thought, well, isn't that interesting? He told me about this, before this was announced publicly, at least the cave part. Of course, they said nothing about relics being found. They cleared all that out of there in true, Smithsonian fashion, as we've become used to it. So I found the Ernetti chronovisor and the Baird camera past event stories to be quaint and interesting. You learn pretty quickly that those stories are BS, and you learn why. Mm-hmm. That we learn that they are. But what's interesting is what you described. Being able to look into the past is what the remote viewing program guys claim they can do.
Right.
Joe McMoneagle, Lynn Buchanan, those guys, they, through remote viewing, you're supposed to be able to look into the past. And the whole thing with the future, what's interesting about the future is the implication would be that the present that you're in has already happened, right? Because doesn't it seem like there has to be a future that's happened already before you could see it? If you're thinking in a traditional or linear fashion. Now, time very possibly being, my mentor told me once, he said, time is circular. And I've subsequently modified that to time is spherical.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Right. It makes sense.
So anyway, the remote viewers are apparently able to look across and through time. And again, going back to Finney, whose story predated the remote viewing program, according to the official history, by 2 years, it makes me wonder, because when you read Finney's novel, if you know anything about the remote viewing program that the Army put together, it's virtually identical. Each of the time travelers is sequestered in a little, like, apartment-sized, space that is decorated, with all these trappings of the target time. Like if you're going back to the Old West, they'd make it like a saloon hotel room or what have you. If you're going back to ancient Rome, a Roman villa, like maybe Hadrian's Villa, and you would wear the clothing. Well, in the remote viewing program, they sequester you in a little room, right, where you don't have any interruptions. And, in your mind, you just go through and you go through the protocol. Now, remote viewing, there's a protocol. So I wonder, could a protocol be developed for consciousness-driven time travel? Because in the books, it's just the protagonists convince themselves by rote. They just go through, it is July 17th, 1896. I am in the Hotel Del Vecchio, blah, 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 blah. And so it is kind of an informal protocol. I think that, the RV program was a real program. It's very controversial, the whole remote viewing thing. All I can say is, give it an honest attempt yourself. My experience with it has been kind of extraordinary at times. Even I, though, have said, is this an interesting trick of the mind that we don't understand? Or is it truly being able to throw the consciousness somewhere? I don't know, but I've had personal experiences with it and demonstrated it to, when I first learned it, I demonstrated the RV protocol and doing it. I picked the 3 people in my life at that time who were the most skeptical of my shit. And one of them was my son, God bless him. He was in high school. I have a great relationship with my son, but he'll smile and say, yeah, my dad, and another one was one of my sisters, who's kind of a scaredy cat of all things weird, but she can be skeptical of me and my stuff. And the third one was my then just broken up with ex-girlfriend, who's more skeptical of a guy than the girl you just broke up with. And I demonstrated it for her all independently. All 3 of them, they were weirded out. It was, how did you do that? How did you do that? And I said, I followed this protocol, and isn't that weird? And they were impressed. I was blown away.
Well, what did you do? So take me into this situation. So what did you do that blew them away?
What you do is, to demonstrate this, for example, I had a stack of various magazines, cooking magazines, travel magazines, I think a couple of sports ones, just, and they were a stack that had been sitting, we're talking thousands of different pages to pull from, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So I told them, pick one of the pages, pick something on the page. It can be a place, person, an object, person, place, thing, and, circle the thing you want me to pick out. And then I want you to fold it up in an envelope. And on that envelope, I want you to mark, this numbers, like it was 8 digits. It was 4 digits, then a hash, and then another 4 digits.
Okay. Yeah.
And you do that. And when you got the number, put it on the envelope, and then just set the envelope where I can see the envelope, the outside of the envelope with the number. And then I do the protocol that I was taught. A lot of people who have read about this or done it, they know the protocol I'm talking about. And you just kind of go through, and there's a bit of automatic writing in it. But what it is things, images, sounds, smells, stuff comes to you, and you just write it down, and you got to do it as it first comes to you. Okay, you can't linger because you're trying to get the fresh, what's coming to your consciousness, and you write it down, and then you'll do a drawing, a sketch, and then you'll do, an even more, a little bit more of a drawing that puts things, in the proper juxtaposition. And then you write a little paragraph about what it is you think you're seeing. And I nailed it each time. I would do this, and then they would just be like, oh my God, because they would look at the thing, and then we'd open the envelope so that I could see what the target was. And I had clearly drawn what was in there that they had selected. I had clearly described it, with colors and stuff and shapes and sounds and smells and stuff. And it was weird for me too, that it worked so extraordinarily, and it weirded them out as well. So, the idea of seeing through time is that the RV guys in Project Stargate, they would be given just a number, because that's what it is. It's a double. It's, you're blind to it. You don't know. It's just a number. Right. They'd be given a number, and they would go through all that. And they do their drawing and their description. And then when they found out what the number was assigned to, the target, it would be I think one guy, Joe McMoneagle, he was given Mars like 500,000 years ago, or whatever. Lynn Buchanan did one, 50 years from now kind of thing. Yeah. And, but they didn't know they were looking at the past or the future.
Right.
While they did it, and the stuff they got, now you could say, well, how do you confirm stuff from the future? Well, you're right. You can't until it happens, but you do have the opportunity to confirm things in the past,
Right.
So it's one of those things, but all the snarks and the skeptics who I don't even know why they even bother with this community other than just trolling and wanting to get a laugh between their friends. But it's real interesting, it's real interesting the things you can experience doing that. And if you give it an honest go at it, I defy you to say that it's a waste of time, and you got nothing,
Well, it's
slightly convincing.
What I always found interesting about remote viewing is that it, now, like I remember when I first got into the scene, that was kind of about when it was first coming into vogue, like the revelations about it and everything. So now we're talking like 20 years ago. It always has struck me as interesting that if it was as fantastic as it seems to be, you would think that it would be something that people, that would have actually taken off in a sense, like fucking meditation or look at pickleball, dude. Yeah. Pickleball came out like fucking a decade ago, and it's everywhere. It's like, so for some reason, remote viewing never it's I think it's popular, and maybe there are communities online and
there are. I'm a member of one.
Yeah, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's like you would think that this thing would be transformative beyond a small sort of relatively small group of people online and in real life.
Yeah, well, that's because, look, most people don't give things an honest try. Most people are lazy. They want to half-ass it, and then, if it's not extraordinary, then it's nothing. Some of the critics literally are just guys who happen to be very angry. They're at points in their lives where they're very angry about other things, personal things. Oh, yeah. So it's coming out in their talking about extraordinary phenomena. They need to get a grip on their own lives and maturity. But then there's also, I mentioned these certainty addicts. You and I both know there's people in our community that it's got to be certain, or by God, you shouldn't talk about it or shouldn't even think about it. Again, I ask, why are you even in this community? Why don't you go to the sports bar or be a political, junkie? Just get out of the extraordinary phenomena community, because it's clearly driving you nuts. You clearly think it's all BS. Why are you here? And you want to silence other people from talking about stuff. But that's why I say, give it an honest try if you're going to try it. But you know what? My thing is, take it or leave it, buy it or don't. I don't care. I crossed my Rubicon with weird experiences in 2010. That was the year I finally realized I don't really give a damn who respects what I'm saying or believes what I'm saying. I know what I've experienced and stuff. And I think what it is it might be, and I talk about it in this book, and I want to be clear to the listener, this is not a book about remote viewing. Remote viewing is referred to because I think that some of the steps in the method are very, very similar to remote viewing. Right. This is not, for those of you who, I don't want you to be turned off. Oh, it's an RV book. No, it's not. It's not.
No, we just went down on a tangent. We're on a side.
Yeah. So just so but it's one of those things where try it, give it a try. See, here's the thing. It's like with, as you know, I was in the spook world, former agent, and what my career specialty is physical surveillance, discrete physical surveillance, okay? I could follow my own mother and sisters who I've known all my life. I could follow them around all day and they'd never even know I was there, okay?
Yeah.
Anybody with my level of experience can do that. I'm not special within, my level of experience, okay? Now, here's a thing that I always like that Sean Connery says in The Untouchables when they're waiting, they're kind of on a stakeout, they're kind of doing surveillance, stationary surveillance.
Yeah.
And Andy Garcia's getting, hey, when's something going to happen? And Connery says, look, we are doing something, you don't look for something to happen. Don't even want something to happen. Just watch and see what does happen.
Right.
Okay. So my version of that would apply to what I'm talking about in this time travel method is, look, don't push yourself and expect to suddenly travel through time into the past, 1,000 years ago or whatever, just like you would in a movie. Try the method, and you may not jump back in time physically, but you might have some type of interesting experience in which you get a glimpse of the past,
Right.
in which you feel it or you hear it, or maybe if you go back still within the span of your own life, maybe you'll vividly relive a moment that you recall.
Yeah.
It's just as much to see what does happen when you try it as it is to get the ultimate result of actual time travel. At the very least, maybe you can relive fond memories, of a loved one who's gone,
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you can, if you forgot something that maybe you can pull it up and remember it in vivid detail.
Yeah.
Maybe if you lost something, you can, which is what some people use RV for, but it's primarily have fun learning about the stuff that I talk about in here, and give it a try. And don't be too hard on yourself if the time travel, literal time travel part doesn't work, but you never know what else will happen.
Yeah.
The human mind is amazing. It can tap into dimensions that we can't even see.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's, we haven't even scratched the surface of what we're capable of, I think, with consciousness and everything else. So, and this may be sort of tongue in cheek, but in the description of the book says the author has provided guidance on what the prospective time traveler needs to know when employing the consciousness-driven method of chronological self-transport. So I guess I without spoiling anything, give me a bit of the guidance that such a prospective time traveler, it's a guide.
Well,
so what do you advise?
Well, okay. Just as I said in the Finney novel and the Matheson novel and film, you'll want to, you'll first want to, within this method, you'll want to have something for your psychic grappling hook to latch onto. Now, desire, okay, what you're trying to do is ignite your desire to get to that place in the past. Okay.
I see.
So, as in the Matheson novel, romantic love is what motivates the protagonist to go back in time. He sees a photo of a woman who lived the century before, and he falls in love with her, because of the photo, and he's just got to go back and meet her. So romantic love, what's more powerful for human beings than romantic love, right? But it doesn't have to be romantic love, It can just be something that you really, really strongly desire to see, or someone you desire to meet. Now, I recommend in the book that you stay within, the first time you do it, you stay within the span of your own life. For instance, someone in your generation, go back to 1975, go back to maybe 1980 or something, a world you're familiar with, but, you got to wear clothes of that time. You have to have the right kind of money on you. You don't want to go back in the past. You don't want to go back to 1975 with money that says issued in 1999 or 2000.
Okay. So it's that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to have the right kind of things on you. You don't want to go back with a cell phone. Okay. You don't want to go back with anything that, is going to put you on the radar, because you may not want to be noticed.
Yeah.
Okay. You go back far enough, you go back 100 years ago and you go telling somebody, oh, I'm a time traveler, you're going to end up in a psychiatric ward, and you're not going to get out. And you might even get, lobotomized or get electroshock therapy, and you'll never get home.
Right.
But, just the guidebook gives you the method. It tells you some things like, have the period clothing, have the period money, for instance, for first aid, think of the things that, if you went back to 1975, which is the example I use in the book, you could find this online. Look at what the average first aid kit had back, in 1975, and have those kinds of things in it. Have the kinds of things you think you'll need if you get hurt or sick or something, that's just one example of how to get yourself feeling like you're in that time.
Interesting. All right. This is remarkable. It's a weird. I never thought of this from you, Walter. So I'm impressed that you have come up with such a odd little sort of exploration of time travel. It's interesting. Well, actually, now that I think about it, this is actually very on brand for you. Actually, it's quite.
I'll tell you, I have Jack Finney, the author Jack Finney, and Richard Matheson, to thank for getting me and many others to look at time travel in that way, where you don't need a machine, you don't need a device. Now, I do have a personal theory that I do believe this right now. I think this. I like to say think, not the word believe.
All right.
I truly think that each and every one of us is capable of time travel shortly after the moment we die. Why do I think this? Well, we know that back in 2007, the goddess Hecate introduced herself to me, kind of entered my purview, and has been a part of everything I've researched, whether I was expecting her or not. But basically, Hecate, she stands at a triple crossroad in the in the underworld afterlife, the land of the dead. Yeah. And she greets you when you die and you enter the land of the dead. But she stands at a triple crossroad, the intersection of three roads. Yeah. Dummy me, it was a big mystery. Oh, what does that mean? Until Seshari and I really started doing a deep dive into time phenomena and the idea of time travel. And then I had an extraordinary series of experiences. One was a waking experience. The other one was a dream, in which I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Hecate kind of lifted her veil. She's the veiled goddess. See, Hecate is associated with the Egyptian goddess Isis, not the queen, the goddess, who is a veiled goddess. And the lore is when Isis, the goddess Isis, who is Hecate, lifts her veil, she's revealing to you something about herself. And I feel like I got the veil lifting in this particular dream and in this waking experience, where I realized the triple crossroad is past, present, and future. She stands at the intersection of past, present, and future, essentially time. She's the goddess who controls our access to time. So what I think is that when you die and you go before her and she's there, she gives you a choice. You can continue on straight, which is the present. You're present at that point, and continue on into the land of the dead. Okay. All right. And whatever experience you need to have there. Or you can go into the past of the life you just ended. So you can travel back into your own lifetime that you just lived. Now, I personally believe in reincarnation. So or you can go forward, future, just go ahead and go and start your next life. That's what I think the triple crossroad is.
Interesting.
Either go back and relive part or all of the life that just ended, or stay in the land of the dead, the underworld, or go forward to your next life.
Wow.
And
that's fantastic.
So I think we all get this option. We all get this choice when we die. Now, the natural question is, do you think you've done it? Yeah, I think I did it. I think I've lived this life before. There's a very weird experience I had in December of 79. I've told you about it. I've written about it. It's in my Confessions of a Spooky Mind. And to me, the best explanation for what I experienced, it was kind of a weird awakening. The best explanation that I have ever been able to apply to that is I woke up in my 16-year-old self. In other words, I had died.
Yeah.
And I had chosen for whatever reason to come back and relive this. And when I woke up that morning, the first thing I did was look at my hands, and my thought was, wait, these aren't my hands. I thought, well, that's kind of weird. For years, I wondered. And then, I finally came to understand that, wait a minute, they were my hands, but I had not seen my younger hands in decades. It was like, wait, these aren't my old guy hands.
Right.
Oh, these are my younger guy hands, and on and so forth. I've talked about this experience in detail elsewhere, but the idea of having died and then returned to relive this life, it explains the deja vus. Just a lot of stuff.
Interesting.
So that went into why I wrote the book. Personal experiences,
That I find that interpretation of Hecate and the afterlife very almost delightful in a sense, because it actually fits it makes sense in a way. It does definitely make sense where it's like, look, you can go back and watch all that happened, go back and experience it if you want, take as long as you want. They probably tell you. They're like, go back, get it out of your system or whatever. Or then you come back, or then you stay here and do whatever the fuck. That's the big mystery, right? Whatever here is, or you can just have another go at it, have another go
into another
on
life.
the ride,
a new life, and I know that here's what I sometimes face. The other Hecate enthusiasts generally tend to be in the witchcraft world, and a lot of the witches tend to think they own Hecate, that Hecate's all about the witchcraft and all about, their thing. Hecate is associated with the witchcraft stuff, but they don't own her. She's so much more. I have friends and associates that it scares the hell out of them that I speak positively of Hecate, because they're in their traditional, conventional conditioning that, Hecate is this evil demon. And, and that comes from churchianity. Churchianity has really done a disservice to a lot of people in their intellects. And it's usually the churchianity people who, disapprove of my view of Hecate, because they only know the vaudevillian witchcraft Hecate. And she's actually a much brighter, lighter character figure. And I think she's much more about this thing with time than even all the other things that she's about.
Interesting. Now, when you say churchianity, do you mean, is that like a catch-all for Christianity and other religions, or is that something?
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. People, they hear me say that and they go, "Oh yeah, he's like us. He's one of us. He's an atheist." I am by no means an atheist. Folks, sorry. I believe in many gods, one almighty. I personally walked away from going to church at 12 years old. And because particularly in the United States, there's what you think about, there's your relationship with God. There's what your personal, religious spirituality is and stuff. And then there's this church thing. that so many people have been convinced by the priesthood that they must have. Well, I'm sorry, but there are, don't get me wrong, there are good churches, good groups of people who gather in fellowship and all that stuff in Christianity, and they do good things for their community, and they get, high praise from me on that. But churchianity is when the church activity and the being, associated, everyone sees you're associated with a particular church, that becomes more important than your actual relationship with what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah.
That's churchianity.
Gotcha.
And churchianity is greatly a product of American Protestantism, American Protestant evangelism, which, by the way, is a direct product of the Puritans. Remember, the Puritans, they did all the ruckus, and stuff over in England, finally pissed off enough people, it was like, get out of here. And Europe said, no, don't come here. So where did they go? They went to your state. They went to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they proceeded to show what assholes they were there, too. By burning and drowning women and terrorizing them, accusing them of being, evil and all this stuff. And people, thank God that they were mostly contained, but they kind of proliferated through American Protestantism. And then that became evangelism. I am opposed to evangelism. Be an example if you want someone to join your little club. Don't go out there, thinking you've got to convert people. I spent years in my profession, in a part of the world where we see the extremes that forced conversion can bring on the world. And that was in the world of Islam. And that goes to the greater, when I say churchianity, I'm not just only singling them out. There is a problem with the Yahwist monotheisms, okay? That's Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, who, all worship one form of this Yahweh or Jehovah character. Well, that's a whole other discussion, but there's some good, solid scholarship out there that people can go find that, first of all, Yahweh is not a proper name of any entity. Yahweh's a title, meaning just like commander or chieftain or something like that. Basically, what you've got is a pretender pretending to be this almighty God who's ruthless and bloodthirsty and jealous. I got to ask you, what does an almighty God need to be jealous about? So it's all a narcissistic BS ruse, and it worked for the various priesthoods. Okay. Now I point out these three because, the Judaism had its time long ago where it was bloodthirsty. Yahweh says, I want you to have these people's real estate. So go kill every man, woman, and child. And, suddenly they're iniquitous, because Yahweh says. And, but they kind of finally backed off of that stuff. But then, Christianity and Islam took up the cause of forced conversion. We had the Crusades, we had the Inquisition, and then, Islam with jihad and terrorism and stuff. And it seems to be that the most bloodthirsty, violent religions, in our known history have been these three. All following this Yahweh character. And so, when I refer to churchianity, I also equally have not positive things to say about Islamic radicalism, or even the things that, the ancient Hebrews did when slaughtering every man, woman, and child because their alleged God wanted them to have their real estate. So it's an issue that,
All right, I just didn't know if that was a regular used term or if you had coined that churchianity.
Oh, I got it. No, I got it from Joseph Farrell, who, by the way, is a highly respected and renowned theological scholar. Joseph Farrell was writing tomes on scriptural analysis and theology for years before he started writing about the Giza pyramid and the bell. And I got that from him. He kind of feels, the same way about that particular brand of Christianity, churchianity. That's the term. I got that term from him.
Interesting. All right. So, do you have any? Now, we all kind of you and I used to talk UFOs quite a bit. Like I said, You had me on over the summer. We talked about the hearings and the latest state of things. Have you been following the UAP? Let's call it what it is. UAP scene since you and I last chatted last summer on the Walter Bosley show.
Not really, because I find it so ludicrous and uninteresting and full of crap. When I do take a glance in, I find that nothing has changed. I see a bunch of people being spun up going, oh, it's different. And it's never different. It's just all BS. And, we're still kind of in the aftermath of the big 2017 lie. Right. The New York Times article BS and the whole TTSA CIA front and Lou Elizondo and his nonsense. I know that as I understand it, the UFO bros are still out there, and I still hear that UFO Twitter is still a dumpster fire.
Yeah, well, Twitter itself is a dumpster fire, and then UFO Twitter has.
I just find there's so many more interesting things than UFOs.
Yeah.
Oh, and I find that there's so much more interesting about UFOs than the whole ET stuff. Like Josh Cutchin and his work on UFOs and the dead, fascinating. I find all other explanations besides the ET one for UFOs to be much more interesting and fascinating. Yeah.
Well, do you, as a former intelligence guy, do you have thoughts on sort of what this is all about? Because I can't possibly imagine that that they're going to tell us there's aliens. So there's some kind of underlying agenda here at work that they're trying to manipulate the public into feeling about something one way or the other.
I think all the basic scenarios are true. I think most of it is secret technology that people get glimpses of, and they don't know how to explain it, and they're allowed to believe that it's otherworldly to keep it covered. I think that there are extraterrestrials visiting our world. I've always said that. I just think it's very, very small numbers compared to what the enthusiasts, think it is.
Right.
And I also think that there's this otherworldly, interdimensional, high strangeness sources of UFOs too. I think it's all real to varying degrees. To me, the ET part and the technology part is easy, and it's much more mundane. Now, on disclosure, for several years now, I'm convinced that the ETs are the ones controlling whether they are there's disclosure or not. The ETs are the ones that want themselves not disclosed, not announced. And when they decide they want to be known and seen to the masses, they're going to reveal themselves. Right. Okay, whether our government likes it or not, or whether whoever likes it or not, when they decide, they're just going to appear in the skies. But I'll tell you one thing: nobody in the UFO community, like it or not, is going to be the one that they go to who reveals it. Okay, that is, talk about what the term escapes me, but when a child thinks that the world is all about them, that's very childish thinking. Nobody in this community is going to be the one who they come to and reveal them, to use them as the one to reveal
as the conduit. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
As the conduit. Yeah. It ain't going to happen through this community, folks. They're either I think primarily that they're just going to appear in the skies and take no notice of the UFO enthusiast community. They're not that important.
Right. Yeah. I don't even think the aliens would appreciate the UFO enthusiasts. They probably fucking don't like them at all. They're probably they're probably like, that would be the ultimate hilarious sort of ending of all this.
Oh, yeah.
The aliens come and the UFO people are like, oh, thank God, we've been waiting for you. We love you. And the aliens are like, fuck you. You are just leave us alone. You've been you ruined everything.
The UFO community, folks, the real zealots, they're like the person who is like a clout chaser who's dying to be in with the aliens and wants to be one of the cool kids. And the aliens are going to kind of look at them as the groupie. Like, yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Get away from me.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's what the UFO community zealots are going to be to the aliens. They might not even notice them.
Yeah, exactly. That would be, it would be hilarious. I have a feeling the aliens, I can't imagine they appreciate if they're like, look, we'll handle this from here, and then the UFO people are like, fuck you, come on. Yeah, I can imagine they're like, all right, I'm all set with you.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things play out. I feel like it's kind of reached its zenith at this point, or I think it kind of culminated like earlier in the year, and we're seeing a little bit fizzle out, and all these books that are coming out and shit. It's like, I feel like we're in the cash out stage for these people who were the big players and shit on it.
Yeah, I think we're in the beginning. We're in a cyclical shift. The previous, I've always said, these new flavors of the month, these new stars come on, and they have about 5 years, somewhere between 3 to 5 years of, being lauded and being important. And then at the end of that 5 years, they either deliver on something, or they prove they're substantial as a scholar or whatever, or they're gone, and then it's the next. So here's what's interesting. Like you say, we're seeing the people of the big 2017 bullshit revelation. We're seeing them. People are finally more and more beginning to push them aside because they realize they're nothing. They're not delivering. They were manipulating us, using us the whole time. But it's going to be interesting to see as they're fading out, and they are. It's going to be interesting to see who the new flavors of the month emerging are.
Right.
The new false prophets, who the new priesthood of this tomfoolery, who's going to emerge, saying, I have the answers, and of course, we just have to, speaking of time, we just have to watch our watches and our clocks and watch their time on stage tick down too.
Yeah, well, like David Grush, he just showed up last year, so he's the clock's ticking right on him. So
yeah, and he might not last the 5 year cycle. I think he'll last the 3 years.
Yeah, it'll another interesting chapter in the history of UFOs. That guy.
But I remind you and everybody, who am I? I'm just a guy with a small YouTube channel who's, a blip on TV a couple of times.
Well, on that note, what else? What do you have beyond the NYMZACON? What are you working on? You just came out with the time travel book. So what else?
The time travel book. I'm working right now on finishing the Esoteric Napoleon 2, my long-awaited follow-up to my very popular Esoteric Napoleon book, and I'm real excited about that. That should be be released by Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And so that's exciting.
What is the esoteric? Now I'm going to interrupt you because we want to plug this. So, what is the esoteric Napoleon? I'm vaguely familiar with your stuff, but I'll try to keep it. I can't keep up with anybody, so it's not just
I'll try to keep it simple and short. Basically, here's what I found when I did a deep dive on Napoleon Bonaparte. This image of him as the fat little balding despot, rotten, evil Antichrist is more than 200 years of British bullshit propaganda. This man was he flawless? Heck no. But this man was a great man. And there's people right now that are booing and hissing. And, well, what about this? What about that? And I'm telling you, you give an honest look, you'll find out that these things that you're saying are incontrovertible proofs of stuff. That is spin and propaganda. And but what was more fascinating about Napoleon were his personal interests in extraordinary things, ancient civilizations, weird phenomena. And the biggest kicker is he might have switched places with his brother after Waterloo. And the Joseph Bonaparte, who came to the United States and lived here for several years, may indeed have been Napoleon himself. And the Napoleon on St. Helena might have been his brother Joseph. This is not an idea original with me. Certain historians started talking about this idea openly back in the 70s. And in 1815, when the British were on their way to arrest Napoleon, they suspected that he was going to flee to America because the United States loved him and offered. There was a U.S. naval frigate off the coast of France where he was, and 2 U.S. Navy officers made it clear that the United States was offering to Napoleon, we've got a frigate waiting, come with us, we'll take you to safety of the United States. The British suspected this was going to happen back then, and they sent 2 men of war to U.S. ports to intercept Napoleon if he did that. It is known by the witnesses right before the alleged arrest of Napoleon by the British, the witnesses and the family and the entourage witnessed Joseph, his brother. He and Joseph looked remarkably alike. They would often Joseph would double for him at times. Joseph begged Napoleon, please switch places with me. Just switch places with me and go to America. And this was witnessed by people at the time. Well, I looked into this, and I think it makes perfect sense. And about a third of my book, the final third of my first book, is about that.
Interesting.
So, I've
never heard this before. Never heard this theory.
There also, the esoteric Napoleon alludes to Napoleon Bonaparte spent a night in the Great Pyramid, and when he emerged, he was visibly shaken, just pale white, frightened. And when his close associate said, what happened? He goes, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Something happened to Napoleon Bonaparte inside the Great Pyramid in the King's Chamber, and I think I know what it was, and I go into that in depth in the book. It was extraordinary, and it's along the lines of what I talk about in the Time Travel Guidebook. It's in that general ballpark.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So not to put words in your mouth, but so you're sort of implying that he experienced some kind of consciousness shift perhaps to the ancient Egypt or something. Like he's
maybe his own future, maybe the possibilities by being able to see through the multiple dimensions. And I specify why and how that could have worked in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Interesting. All right. So this is Esoteric Napoleon.
Esoteric Napoleon, that's the first one. I'm presently finishing Esoteric Napoleon 2, which goes into the mysteries of the Louisiana Territory.
Oh, boy. All right. So hold on now. I have a question here about this.
Yeah.
So the brother, if we go by the mainstream version of the story, Napoleon is arrested and they exile him on the island.
Yeah.
And the brother, is it known? Is it established fact in the historical record that the brother went to America?
Oh, yeah. It's well known.
Was he like a celebrity? Like, was he well known?
Yeah, he was. The Americans loved Napoleon Bonaparte. They sided with the Bonapartists. A lot of Bonaparte's entourage and loyal Bonapartists, his military and everything, fled here to the United States. And they're
like a project paperclip for Napoleon.
Yeah. And here's one interesting thing is that Charles Bonaparte was the great nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, grandnephew, great nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Yeah. And he became the Secretary of the Navy under Teddy Roosevelt. Wow. And he went on to be the Attorney General of the United States, who founded the original Bureau of Investigation, which later became the FBI.
Wow.
Charles Bonaparte is a blood relative of Napoleon, whose, grandparents fled here. I believe Jeremy, Napoleon's younger brother, Jeremy, was his grandfather.
That's interesting.
The Bonapartes, and I get into the the Bonapartes, in my opinion, have been and still are an influential power in this country that is feared. But see, one of the reasons Joseph would have volunteered was at the time everybody thought that Napoleon was going to be exiled to an estate in the north of England and live a nice life. Mm-hmm. But the British, the authorities, the elites, the ones running the country, the royals and everything, they were scared to death that if they brought Napoleon to English soil, their own people would just fall in love with the guy, because their citizens were anxious to see him come to England. They wanted to see him and meet him. And they were scared to death that Napoleon could rouse up their own, the British people and overthrow, the throne there. So it was a last minute secret decision to take him directly to St. Helena. Joseph would not have known that. So he ends up on the Rock. And now get this, the guy, the historian who was sent by England to interview I say the Bonaparte exile, because I believe it was really Joseph. This is a part of the historic record. He reported back to the British commander of the island and his British authorities back in London. He said, you guys, this is Joseph. This isn't Napoleon. I think they switched places.
Wow.
And yet it was suspected by the British. It was suspected by the British that he switched places.
Interesting.
But yet it worked. He got away with it. And,
So what did Joseph Bonaparte, when he came to America, so he just kind of
had an estate. He had an estate in New Jersey.
Kind of just chilled out and didn't really make any noise.
And for a while he was in Philadelphia. And get this, it was either in Jersey or Philadelphia. He's walking down, the promenade, one of the main boulevards or whatever, and a guy who had been Napoleon's, one of his Secret Service guys, personal guards, ran up to him and called him Mon Emperor, you're with us. And I'm doing air quotes here, so Tim can see it. You can't, the listeners can't. But so-called Joseph smiled and told the guy, No, I'm not the emperor. I'm Joseph. As if wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Don't say that. And the guy insisted. He's like, yeah, I know my emperor. So there were people who were close to Napoleon who knew the difference. And I think our government knew. I think Madison was the president. He couldn't officially meet with so-called Joseph, who I think was Napoleon. He couldn't meet with him, formally in the White House because of diplomacy. Think about it. But it was made well known that Napoleon would have been very welcome in the United States after Waterloo. All he had to do was get here, and I think he did.
Interesting. Wow. I gotta dig into this, because I've never ever heard this theory before, and it's
read my book. I'll
fascinating.
Send it to you.
Yeah,
and that's a good place to start, but it's in the historical record. Now, in the Pantheon, I don't know if you've ever been to Paris, but they have the Pantheon where all the great French figures and stuff are buried. What I think, and I'm not the only one, others think, remember, when Joseph died, he did return to France, and he is buried in France. Guess what? I and others think that in the crypt that is Napoleon's, when you go to the Pantheon, that's Joseph's body in there. And in Joseph's, that would be Napoleon's body.
Well, yeah, presumably if they switch places. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So,
wow. That's tremendous, dude. Send me this fucking book. I want to.
Will do.
I have a feeling you just sold a bunch of books here on the esoteric Napoleon thing, because this is the wildest theory that I've heard in a long time. I like it.
And the beauty is, it's not. There's going to be my haters out there. That Bosley's pulling this out of his ass. Hey, they thought at the time that he was going to do this.
Right.
Other historians 50 years ago thought this. So hey, it's not something I pulled out of the air. It's something that I subscribe to. That I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think this is the case. And I'm finishing up the new book because there's interesting mysteries about the Louisiana Territory and Louisiana Purchase. I'll give you a tidbit. Last little tidbit on this. Napoleon Bonaparte sold Louisiana Territory to the United States in 1803, okay, for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
But before that, in 1802, he ordered his naval secretary, Decree. He said, put together a team. I want an expedition of the Louisiana Territory, and I want it done in the utmost secrecy.
Yeah.
Now, France had a huge contingent over there because of what was going on in Santo Domingo and Haiti and all that stuff. But it would have been perfect to have a small team, secretly just kind of break away from all that and go into the Louisiana Territory. I wonder, what I'm investigating and gathering the evidence for is the question, did the expedition happen, which I think it did? What were they looking for? What might they have found before selling it to the United States? And that's what the book explores, primarily that and a few other very interesting things.
Do you have a theory on what they were looking for?
Oh, sure. It had to do with, ruins or remnants, relics of a lost civilization.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Or
any indication of civil. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure
pre-Columbian visitors. I mean, even before the Vikings, we're talking, if you look up something called the Kham Empire, Cham, I think they were a descendant of the long ago Vedic Empire. And that's a whole other discussion. But there's reason to look for, relics and remnants, but they could have been looking for extraordinary sources of gold. That's what the book explores. What could they have been looking for? What might they have found?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. Before you're going to sell the land, you're going to send some people to check it out and make sure there isn't like how they sold Alaska to the United States. And then they were like, oh, hey, shit, we found a whole bunch of oil under here.
Yeah.
Probably like, oh, maybe they should have checked that out first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Now, that's the esoteric Napoleon II. Something popped into my head before I let you go. I want to ask you also.
Sure.
Because you're a big believer in the idea that not necessarily that we didn't go to the moon, but that the whole presentation was like a hoax, which I find to be a fascinating theory. But what I guess my real question is, given that mindset, and you've looked at the secret space program and the hoopla surrounding all that, everything, we can touch on that if you like. But the big question is, they say they're going back to the fucking moon. So do you think they're really going back to the moon, and or is this a lot of malarkey? Because it seems, at least now, for the first time in my life, it seems like they have a genuine plan to go back to the moon. I don't know if you're following this, but they have like now it's probably like a 4-year plan. I think it's closer to like 4 or 5 years, presumably. Like they should be getting back to the moon by the end of the decade, they claim.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm 45 years old. I've heard this fucking my whole life, but this is the closest I've seen to them actually being on paper. I can see how it's supposed to unfold. Yeah. So, with all that said, what do you make of all that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think the Apollo 11 thing was a hoax. I just don't think it was truly the first time we put men on the moon. I think we did it secretly to make sure we could do it.
Right.
To make sure we could do it. Now, I do think the Apollo 11 moon landing really happened. I think the only thing secret about it, I don't think they told us what they found up there.
Right.
And I think there was some type of what we would call exotic technology to assist in getting there and getting home.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Yeah, but we definitely went. I just don't think Apollo 11 was truly the first time.
Okay, all right.
Again,
I apologize. I really simplified your take on things. So
and the only reason I'm clarifying it is because this is a big thing out there, and you got to be specific, or people run with what they think.
Exactly.
Now, my answer to when people say, "Hey, do you think we're going back to the moon?" My answer is a question. What makes you think we ever really stopped going in the first place?
Right. Yes. I'm just going by the
what's being said. I think it's going to be. We're standing at the threshold of space being opened commercially in a big way. Go back to the New World. Europe during the Renaissance, we got, people, until 1492, Europeans and, people over there didn't know about the Americas, right? Well, malarkey. Of course they did, because, ancient mariners were going there. The various archives, like the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, the Imperial Archives in Constantinople, and so forth, they had records of this, and there were traditions and stories. And there were other cultures that weren't European that, were going, to this part of the world. But here's the thing. And then even some Europeans were going secretly. It's believed that Columbus went in 1485 the first time. There's much reason to think that. There's the Templars, the stories of them coming over, and the Vikings. So here's the deal. Here's how I look at it. And I'm not the only one that looks at it this way. There came a time when the Americas, it was time to exploit the resources. And they knew they needed manpower. The best way to do that is, look what we found. This whole new world, these new continents. Oh my gosh. Hey guys, sign up for adventure. And we need you to, work the gold mines and, take all the lumber, blah, 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 exploit the resources. So it was time. It was time to open up the new world. Now, we are in an identical situation with space. It's time now to exploit the resources off planet. So what's going to happen? Oh, we're going to open up space. And wouldn't you know it, there's this world that's habitable out there. Or wouldn't you know it, there's we found something on Mars or whatever. And we need to send people there. We need to have a colony. So what am I saying? The moon is going to end up being such an important launch point. To the rest, the exploiting the resources of outer space, that we've got to go back and start establishing, the bases there, the ports, what's going to be a port, a commercial port. Because that's really what's going to explode space travel, is when commerce gets involved. So I think we're going to go back in that overt way, and it's commerce that's driving it.
Well, it's so slow. It's very frustrating because we're getting old here, Walter. It's like
it will be for a while. It will be for a while, but then I think you're going to see a big leap forward.
I hope so. All right, so here we are. It's the NYMZACON is actually going to be in a couple days. So folks who are in the Sonora area who can make it out to Sonora, you definitely want to do so. You can find out more at walterbosley.com. It's right there on the page with also Walter's books. It says right there. So you just click on that if you want to know more about the book. Let me see. I just pulled up the website here. Yeah, you just scroll down. It has all the stuff. It has the books, has the NYMZACON. So people should go and check it out. I'm envious. This sounds, it sounds like a really well thought out event. Like I said, with 3 interesting aspects to it, which I really like a lot. And so I'm envious. I wish I could be there.
Well, next year, we got to get you out here next year.
Absolutely, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been fantastic, folks. Find out more at walterbosley.com, and we'll definitely get you back, and we can chat more about all this stuff in the future. And, anytime you need me on the Walter Bosley Show, just give me a holler, brother.
Let's do it soon. You'll be hearing from me.
All right. Good night.
All righty. Thank you, Tim.